Hey guys, what's up? Felix here from Vamify. Welcome to my free online course here on YouTube, Learn Premiere Pro from A to Z. Please make sure to follow the course from the beginning, from chapter 1, so you can get the most value out of it and follow this course step by step. In this part, I will explain the timeline to you. This is our main window in which all the magic happens. Let's go through it step by step. These symbols up here should all be selected. They will later be relevant for the editing flow. We will come back to that later. So just leave these three icons selected for now. This is just a marker. If I click on it, I can use it to highlight where the cut will be made. Here we have the settings again, where you can choose what will be displayed and what not. Here are the video tracks. It is important that they are shown. For example, here's track 1, that's correct. Then there is the track lock. We can track everything with it. When you lock, that means that you can no longer select anything, which can be important for the editing flow. This closes the track. So here we have the toggle sim clock, which is also important for the editing flow. You can select it to edit different inserts of cuts. Basically, the toggle sync lock says don't change this track. Just leave anything unaffected if you drop something in. And here we can see the visible or the not visible again. Here in the audio area, we also have the different audio tracks. There's also the toggle sim lock. Here we can mute the track, which is important when we're editing the sound later. You can also choose a solo track here, which means you only hear this one. There's the voice-over record. If you click on it, it counts down and then you can record your voice. This will create a track in here. But you will have to change a few audio settings for this to work properly. So therefore you have to go to the Preferences, click on Audio Hardware and make sure that your input is correct. We can make the timeline bigger or smaller by moving this here, which is also important for cutting. We can display the clips and make them larger or smaller. Personally, I like the display medium size is the best. With the audio tracks, I like it larger, because I can see the waveforms better. A preview display can be set here. If you select this, you can no longer see the video thumbnails. The same applies to the audio waveforms. You can display them here as well. So here you can choose what you want to be shown and what not. Here's the audio clipping, which is also interesting. For example, if I overdrive the clip, you can now see that it strikes at the top and that shows you that it's clearly overdriven. But more on that later in the audio section. So here are the 8 individual tools. The selecting tool, so you can move and rearrange things around. I can select and move a clip individually or grab all the clips and move them together. The same applies to trimming. It is also possible to edit with the trim tool. The same applies when I now have this clip here in the source window. You can go to the effect controls, it's important that it is selected, and then I can use the selection tool to move the position or change the size, etc. So let's move on to the next tool, the Track Selected Forward tool. Once it's selected, you will see these 2 arrows here when you go to the timeline. Depending on where the cursor is, for example, I click here and all clips that are to the right of the blue cursors are now selected. Especially this helps if you have a very long timeline. But this works also the other way around. You only have to change it here at the symbol to backwards. For example, the last 3 on the left here. The next tool is the Ripple Edit tool. Super interesting when it comes to continuity. Here we see my friend Joe painting the wall. You see his movement goes from the top of the bottom of the wall. And here comes a close-up and now it goes up here. But that is the wrong direction. You could of course say, okay, he's going down there, then I know he's about the halfway here and up and down, approximately here. That means I would now select all, go over here and say I'm pulling everything in here, and then the continuity should be right again. But I would have to cut like that all the time until it meshes. That would be quite time consuming. So let's go back again. Now here's the Ripple Edit tool trick. It will simplify the whole thing a bit. When I pick the Ripple tool, I don't have to do all these steps. I just go here to the right side to see how the movement goes. We can see here that the 2 movements are in the middle and the tool now jumps to the right place and leaves no gap. This tool matches immediately and you can see its great effect. I really like this one. That accelerates and simplifies my editing flow quite nicely. So let's move on to the next part, the rolling editing tool. Just now we have simplified the continuity. With the rolling editing tool, you can select it all and drag it to the left. And as you can see, let's say I want to start differently. For example, I want the cut right in the middle of the swiping movement. You point the rolling editing tool from here and then I drag it there, and this will make my friend Joe spray upwards. So this effect sums it all up. A neat tool. And here is the right stretch tool. This is convenient when you start recording with multiple frames. In example, with a slow-mo or a time-lapse. I go over here, I pull this over there, then zoom in and you see he pulled it up to 198%, meaning he plays it super fast. Or the other way around, then the tool turns normal material into slow-mo, so it slows down the footage, in example to 40–42%. Of course you will need the right footage to use this tool. The right stretching tool can be used well if you have recorded with a high frame rate. And now let's have a look at the razor tool. That's actually my favorite tool of them all. I work with this one all the time. It's the editing tool. If you click here, you get your cut immediately. You can jump a lot between the C and the V on your keyboard. C stands for the cut and V is the selecting tool. In other words, when you use the two, you quickly switch between selecting and cut mode and you can work well in the timeline. Very practical for tutorials, podcasts, etc. This is a very important function that you should master at the beginning of cutting. Now here for a tool that is rarely used, the slip tool. I rarely use this tool myself, but let's have a look at it anyways. We have this clip. It's not selected here, so I have to click on this clip and keep it selected. Then I go from left to right, and this is how I can see the respective in and out point. If I go here now and want to postpone it, I have to move it a bit to the right, and then the in point is slightly changed. Here we see the can goes from the bottom to the top, but I want it to go from top to bottom. So I put it here, and now you can see in the in point that it goes from top to bottom. That's what the slip tool is used for. It also depends on how much footage you have in front and behind on each side. But if you keep it selected, you can change the in and out point. Now to the slide tool. It works the other way around. You can already see the two hooks here. So if I click here and I want to drag left and right, then the tool takes the clip once from the left and once from the right. So it takes the out point from the left clip and the in point from the right clip. So the tool moves everything. If I want to move everything to the right, I can select this right here. The audio needs to be selected as well. I can now move it 14 frames to the right, and we have completely shifted the in and out point from the left and right. Now let's focus on the pen tool. This is also very relevant. It enables you to draw freely, but also to set keyframes, drawing an area as you please. In the effect control, you can find all options of what you can do with it. For example, you can make a mask out of it. There are different variations. A new layer gets created in the timeline immediately, which is then called graphic. In addition, you can also use this tool for a speed ramp and draw keyframes with it. So if we want the clip to go down by hand at the end, we only need to select this and then we can pull this clip, and voila! As you can see, the audio will fade out. The same applies here to the visibility. So if you want to change the opacity or an aperture, but there are, however, more elegant variations than the pen tool. This also applies to the rectangle tool. If you want a name insert, a graphic is created again. I want to have a felt or a stroke. The stroke is supposed to be dark blue, and here we already have a little overlay. And here's always the scaling, so you can scale it up or scale it down, or let it fly in from the left to the right. Later on you can animate this with the keyframes. The ellipse tool is basically the same, only its shape is different. And with this symbol you can easily drop a title. But for using the titles we have a deep dive in the title chapter. But let me show a few steps here. You can choose whether you want it horizontally or vertically. You can change the font here. Let's use one of my favorites, the Montserrat. Yeah, cool, this looks nice. And here I will show you the last symbol. This is the hand. Its purpose is to be able to move on the picture in the timeline, like with Photoshop. If you go to 200%, you can scroll in the picture. These are all the options in the timeline. In a nutshell, the selecting tool is the most important tool for me personally. The razor tool is important in order to quickly switch back and forth in the timeline with Command Z or Command V, and to cut quickly in the timeline. The Ripple Edit tool should not be underestimated if you want to maintain continuity and want to achieve it faster. But as I said, there are mandatory rules on how to use the timeline tools and which ones to use more. It's just meant to show you how to start, be it an overview or as a fallback on how to use these tools. If you have any questions, feel free to write a message to me.